Welcome to today's presentation on how to deal with being estranged from your kids. This video series is specifically created for YouTube. I hope you enjoy it, and if you have any queries or questions, please drop them in the comments. Becoming a parent. Many people do it. Pressure from family, society, and even friends all account for the reasons many people decide to become parents. Men particularly tend to pressure women to become moms, telling them it's their duty. And if you're female, you've probably heard this from men a number of times in your life. I know I have. Women are expected to want to become mothers, and many simply don't feel they have a choice in the matter, even if they feel that having kids isn't really right for them. Having kids when you don't really want to be a mom in the first place can lead to intense feelings of regret and a loss of identity and resentment. The idea that a parent might regret having kids is a concept that is cloaked in shame. Parents aren't supposed to feel that way, right? Well, while most parents don't usually feel that way or don't feel that way for enduring periods of time, it's not really a totally uncommon phenomenon. Parenting is difficult and thankless, and many parents are battling with their own issues: mental health, financial difficulties with special needs kids. Parents, after all, are human, and they can experience burnout, and they are fallible. So today's topic is how to handle being estranged from your kids. It's a topic many parents are battling with, and given the increase in parent-child estrangement, it's one I really want to discuss today. I'd like to point out that I'm a parent. I have a child, and I'm extremely proud of her, but our relationship hasn't always been smooth sailing, which is why I believe I can offer my unique perspective on the topic of estrangement. So, buckle in and let's begin. Are happy families an illusion? The fact is that being a parent doesn't mean that you're going to have a perfect relationship with your child. It's not guaranteed. And in fact, sometimes your relationship lands up disintegrating. Toxic parents cause kids to leave, and toxic kids cause parents to walk away. In this series, though, my focus is going to be on kids who walk away from parents. So why does that happen? In the previous slide, I briefly spoke about parents and the challenges they face. These challenges are varied and include mental health, financial, and even issues in their relationships. When parents are under stress, they cannot focus on being good parents, and their kids often suffer. Unfortunately, many couples are unhappy, and they are abusive or neglectful to their kids. This is something that's not really discussed a lot, however. So, why do kids walk away from their parents? The incidence of kids abandoning their parents seems to be on the increase. As I mentioned, I'm a mom myself, and I love my daughter and my grandchildren very much and could not imagine not having them in my life. So I understand the trauma that parents go through when their kids walk away forever. But why do kids walk away? Some of these adult children want no contact because their parents behaved in ways that were clearly abusive or rejecting. To make matters worse for their children and themselves, some parents are unable to repair or empathize with the damage they caused or continue to inflict on their children. However, you can be a conscientious parent and your kid may still want nothing to do with you when they're older. There are two sides to the coin. I love my daughter a lot and am immensely proud of her, but there have been times we have disagreed, and yet I still love her and worry about her. Until the day I die, no matter what happens, she will be my daughter, and every day that passes I worry about her and her children because I really love them a lot. I've always been aware, though, that my daughter and I choose each other every day, because the fact is that just because you are a parent, it doesn't mean that your parents are a carbon copy of you, and that's something I think every parent needs to be aware of. The fact that parents battle with raising their kids and often don't parent properly is where many of the issues with later estrangements arise. Parents can be abusive in many ways, and when kids become adults, they don't want to accept the abuse and judgment, and they walk away permanently. The stats are that up to 1 in 5 UK families experience estrangement, and more than 5 million people have decided to cut contact with at least one family member. Those are pretty high stats. Marriage, divorce, illness, and death all contribute to estrangement. Estrangement most often occurs because of serious behavioral issues in the family, such as emotional, sexual, or physical abuse, or a lack of acceptance around sexuality, gender transition, or rejection after remarriage. These issues are at the core involve parenting, and the fact that the parent is unable to accept that their child is a unique individual. Remember, your kids are not carbon copies of you. When estrangement happens, parents have varied reactions to the situation. Parents can't accept their children's motives. It's too painful to face the possibility that their children find them too unpleasant to be around. Parents cast around for a motive that throws less blame on them. Over time, many estranged parents come to believe that estrangement is a punishment deliberately inflicted on them by adult children who want to see them suffer. I'm sure you've heard this many times. My kids want me to suffer. They love seeing me unhappy. A second explanation is that the parents truly don't believe their children are angry with them. This stems from classic dysfunctional logic. To be angry at someone, they must give you a cause. I have given my children no cause to be angry at me. Therefore, my children are not angry at me. But clearly, your kids are angry at you for some reason. Given that many parents have mental health and other challenges, it's not surprising that they're not adept at parenting and that they experience challenges with parenting. Many parents are clueless and feel out of their depth and parent their kids in a heavy-handed manner. Married couples also experience failures in parenting, although this doesn't seem to be discussed much. The finger is always pointed at single parents. You've heard that discussion many times, but married couples never accept that they have issues with their kids. The fact is, though, that married parents can and do experience significant parenting challenges, and it's always the kids that suffer. We read more and more stories of kids being abused in two-parent homes, and that's usually a function of the parents' inability to cope. The parent's reaction. My kids are trying to hurt me. This is a general, normal response from many parents. Your kids are not trying to hurt you, contrary to what you believe. Your kids are in fact trying to stop the hurt that you are inflicting on them. Hurt you've likely been causing them for many years and are unable to accept due to an inability to accept the things you do. Your kids' actions are usually more about them than about you, even though you do have a significant role to play. Your kids have a right to protect themselves mentally, physically, and emotionally. Your kids don't owe you for being their parent. Your kids don't have to be around you when they become adults. If they want to be around you, that's awesome, but there's no obligation on them to spend time with you. And kids are meant to go their own way when they become adults. Being demanding and clinging just makes you unappealing as a parent. There are two sides to every story when estrangement happens. Estranged parents often say their adult child is rewriting the history of their childhood, accusing them of things they don't do or failing to acknowledge the ways in which they demonstrated love and commitment. Adult children say the parent gaslights them by not acknowledging the harm they caused or are still causing, failing to respect their boundaries, and are being unwilling to accept the adult child's requirements for a healthy relationship. So who's right? Both parties have their own feelings and believe that they're in the right. Boundaries are healthy. We shouldn't underestimate the need for boundaries around behavior that's potentially very harmful to our well-being. It's not selfish to want to protect our physical and mental health. When parents victimize and stigmatize their kids for protecting themselves, it's a good sign that the parent themselves is the issue. Parents cannot expect that because they gave birth to a child, that child needs to accept blanket bad behavior. For the child, the rule is, if you won't accept that from a friend, then don't accept that from a family member. Let's be clear. Kids can't be model kids all the time. They have good days and bad days, and they have challenges and setbacks, and your role as a parent is to help them navigate the challenges that life throws their way. Babies are demanding but compliant, and that changes when your child starts walking and talking and develops a personality. This is when parents realize their kids are not compliant robots. And often, this is when friction starts to enter the relationship between parent and child, and parents start to impose their will on the child, which is very unhealthy. The one thing that I think parents do need to understand is that kids are lent to you. They don't belong to you. Parents seem to believe that when they have kids, they own them somehow. They see their kids as an extension of themselves. They often refer to their kids as mini-me's and dress them in matching outfits or force them to do things they want to do as kids, like beauty pageants. These parents are oblivious to the wants and needs of their kids because they are using their kids to live out the life they never got to live. This is very unhealthy. The thing is, kids don't belong to you. They aren't your clones. They have their own dreams and desires and beliefs, and they aren't necessarily going to share yours, and that's fine. Your kids don't belong to you. They are independent beings, and one day they are going to leave and have their own life, because that's the way life works. It's the same thing you did, and they're going to do the same thing. It's healthy. So why do kids stay away? The fact is, parents get things wrong often, and when kids get older, they refuse to put up with the abuse and control. It's healthy when kids have boundaries. When parents don't share core values with their kids, when they express racist views that their kids don't agree with, that's usually when kids want to distance themselves. When grandparents express toxic views in front of their grandchildren, their kids may decide they don't want their kids to grow up that way and just cut contact. There's an increase in adult kids who are estranged from their parents, and the numbers are growing. Most breakups between a parent and a grown child tend to be initiated by the child. In rare cases, it's initiated by the parent. One of the most common reasons for this is past and present abuse by the parent, whether emotional, verbal, physical, or sexual. Divorce is another frequent influence, with consequences ranging from the adult child taking sides to new people coming to the family, such as step-siblings or step-parents, which can fuel divides over resources, both emotional and financial. Then there's also value differences. Kids grow up being exposed to different influences, so when their values become radically different to those of their parents, this can also cause permanent division. A child who's trans or gay may decide to permanently split from parents who are anti-trans people or gay people because a child sees this dislike as an attack on their identity. Your child doesn't want to be involved with you if you don't like who they are as a person. What would you want to be around your parents if they didn't like and accept who you are as a person? Religious differences are also another major reason for a permanent split between parents and kids. A child may be agnostic when a parent is Christian, and some parents can be really pushy about pushing their religion on their kids, and this causes permanent divisions and resentment. How do you deal with the fact that your child has different beliefs to you? The way I dealt with it, because my child and I have different religious beliefs, is to respect that my child doesn't have to believe what I do. Her life is her life, and her choices are her choices, and it's not my place to force her to believe what I do. I've practiced this since she was young, always respecting her right to choose and making her accept the consequences of her choices without punishing her for them. This is healthy parenting. Things your estranged child wants you to know. They still love you. They didn't take the decision to walk away from you lightly. They've probably given you many chances to remedy your behavior. And kids mourn too. It's not only you mourning the breakdown in the relationship. So, estrangement happens when the values and beliefs between parents and kids differ. After all, when kids are small, adults force kids to do as they mandate. But as kids get older, they become individuals, and they aren't going to blindly follow what you force them into. If you can't understand this as an adult, then you are going to cause your kids to walk away. It's my belief that we are here as guides for our kids. Our role is to offer love and advice, but to never force our beliefs on our children. My parenting has always been about trying to allow my child to learn and grow while offering an open door for it to come to me when needed and offering support and protection when required. I don't interfere in my child's relationships. I don't tell her what to do. I offer guidance and advice, but I don't force it down her throat. I don't think parenting in a manner where you control your kids and force them into your way of thinking breeds a strong relationship between parent and child. So let's talk about positive parenting. Kids all go through rebellious stages. I did, my child did, and every child does. It's a normal way of kids testing boundaries. Your response as a parent determines the kind of relationship you will have with your child. If you overreact and punish harshly, you risk alienating the child. If you ignore the behavior, you risk making the child feel that you don't love him and they might act out even more. The best way to parent during times when kids act out is to try and establish trust. Sitting down and explaining that you love them and want the best for them is a good way to start. Telling them that you are there for guidance and open conversation also engenders trust. If your child does come and openly talk to you about the fact that they experimented with drugs or had sex, don't criticize them and rush to judgment. Remember, the idea is to create trust, and the way you can do that is by not overreacting. So, positive parenting is all about engendering trust, which is what you want with your child. The best thing to do is explain to them that as far as sex goes, experimenting is natural, and if they aim to explore, you want them to be safe. Make sure you speak to them about being safe, and even take them to a sexual health clinic. Let's be honest, your child is going to have sex if they want to. The best thing to do is make sure they're safe doing so, because if you don't, your daughter will end up pregnant and having to make some serious life decisions, and your son will end up having to do the same. Don't scream, shout, degrade them, call them a slut, and tell them you're disappointed in them, because if you do, you will alienate them and they'll never trust you again. Trust me, cruel words hurt and are never forgotten. Your role as a parent is really not to judge. Your role is to love and guide, correct and teach. Your child needs to understand that there are consequences for bad behavior out in the world and that you are there to guide them to navigate the world. Why are kids alienated from their parents? So kids are permanently alienated by parents who don't respect them, don't respect their opinions, are mentally, physically, and emotionally abusive, don't protect them when protection is needed, have views that aren't in alignment with theirs, e.g. about religion or race, to name a few, don't respect that their children, the parents' grandchildren, don't belong to the parents, don't respect the parents' rules regarding their kids, are unreasonable, are bossy, are manipulative, are argumentative and controlling, are critical and hurtful. If you are any one of the things on the list, chances are your kids are already thinking about walking away. The only way that teens can separate from parents is to move through the phase of believing that they don't really need their parents. Celebrate independence as a stepping stone towards lifelong respect and mutual support. Children push us away so that they can define themselves and gain an individual identity. Everyone's been through it, everyone's done it. It's a normal part of growing up. And let's face it, parents aren't going to be around forever. The aim is to create independent, self-sufficient kids. That's your job. If you've done that, you're a good parent. If you've loved, supported, guided, and nurtured, you're a good parent. Anything else is toxic and should be avoided. So if you are estranged, the question is, do you want to reconcile? If you really want to reconcile with your child, it's not going to be an easy journey because you will need to make changes in your behavior. And yes, if you're toxic, you need to look at yourself in the mirror, examine what happened, and make the necessary changes because the way you've been acting is alienating your child. If your goal is to reconcile, you must see things from your child's perspective, even if you don't agree with them. If you're a toxic parent, then your child is best staying away from you unless you can change. You are toxic if you or your spouse is guilty of physical abuse or sexual abuse or emotional abuse of your child. If you are critical and never praise your kids, if you are unsupportive and judgmental, if you have different values and beliefs, and that can be religious beliefs, gender identity, and sexuality. And something that I didn't put on this list, but that's important to mention, is if you favor your one child over another or favor sons over daughters. Kids are extremely sensitive. They know about this, and believe me, it does damage to the parent-child relationship. So if you're guilty of this, best you start remedying it, because it is going to cause permanent damage to your relationship, and you will have been the reason for the damage. So when should you not bother reconciliation? Well, if you can't accept you're wrong and you think it's all your child's fault, then there's clearly no way to move forward. If you are toxic and fail to admit it, then no one will want to be around you, and let's face it, your kids won't want their kids around you, so unfortunately, you will end up being alone. If you can't apologize and mean it, no point in reconciling if you don't think you're wrong and won't be sincere when apologizing. If you are toxic and won't be able to change, in this case, for the sake of your kids and grandkids, I'd say stay away, because you'll damage them. If your kids have no interest in reaching out, well, you can't force adult children to interact with you, so if they don't want to be around you, let it go. Don't force interaction. Your kids' lives don't revolve around you. Make a life for yourself and forget them. If they want to be around you, trust me, they will be. You can't force a relationship just because you're their parent. I've included a few excerpts from things that kids have said about parents. Let me just read through them. Adult children don't need parenting. Trying to parent an adult child is the reason why adult children sometimes feel the need to distance themselves from their parents. Even if the parents are loving, wonderful people, their adult children don't want to be parented. Of course, adult children will always need your love and affection, but you should treat them with the respect you give any other much-loved adult. I'm in my 50s and I love my mom and dad, but there are subtle but frequent attempts to guide me, which gets in the way of having a good relationship. If I don't follow their guidance, I detect that they think I'm being disobedient. Did I mention that I'm in my 50s? This is all very low level, but it feels like an undercurrent to all of our interactions. But the biggest thing I struggle with, and the thing that means I need to limit the time I spend with them, is their refusal to realize that I don't exist in some sort of peripheral world where people's offspring live. I live in the same world as them. I have the same worries and pressures as everyone else, and like everyone, I have things I like and things I don't like. If something goes wrong in my life, I never share it with them, because they only have two responses to anything I'm struggling with. They're totally dismissive. They tell me I'm overreacting and shouldn't be feeling the way I'm feeling, or they totally disproportionately worry. They want to give me several calls a day to seek reassurance that I'm okay. The next post. If you have done your job well, your kids won't need you anymore. It's sad, but sometimes true. They're busy with their own lives. They just really don't need you anymore. They don't have time due to their other obligations. It really doesn't have to mean that they don't love you. This is why people shouldn't make their children their whole lives. Having your children independent from you is the goal. They can stand on their own. They no longer need you. Sometimes this is a side effect of being a good parent. Amen. Make your child independent. That's the goal. I have read that adult children become estranged from their parents, and it's reached epidemic proportions. Do we know why? Yes, the older generation feels it is the younger generation's duty to maintain family ties regardless of their sentiments. Social hierarchy according to age was sometimes embedded into their worldview. Younger people do not have that view. I'm speaking in generalizations as to younger versus older, but generally if there is estrangement, these views clash. The younger generation might view the parents and grandparents as anybody else. For example, I won't tolerate rudeness from my parents or any family member that I wouldn't accept from a friend. Basically, I don't give my niece or my mom a free pass to belittle and berate me. Why would I? I would not allow a friend to belittle and berate me. So family estrangement can come around when people draw boundaries that are unacceptable to the other party, especially if the other party is accustomed to be able to take liberties, such as criticizing, arguing, and meddling, that the other party finds unworkable. These behaviors are called toxic in contemporary parlance. Also, a general lack of empathy leads kids to strongly dislike their parents. If parents physically and emotionally batter their kids and kids call the parents out on it later, and the parents remain unrepentant, it is often, bye-bye mom, bye-bye dad. Why is it their duty to maintain family ties with people who tormented them? That is how they think. If that is the best you could do, it wasn't good enough, and goodbye. The sense of duty and obligation is out the window on the children's sides if the parents are abusive and lack empathy. I can only agree with that. I don't think it's the child's duty to maintain contact with a parent that is abusive and toxic. If you're abusive and toxic, the kids don't have to be around you, and you just have to deal with that. I cut off all communication with my malignant narcissistic mother because she recruited my cousin, one of her flying monkeys, to verbally assault my husband on social media. My mother has continuously tried to destroy my marriage. She was very controlling when I was growing up. She ridiculed and belittled me. She hates my husband because he showed me I didn't have to put up with a manipulative and controlling behavior. I tried having a distant relationship with boundaries with her, and she violated any boundaries I created. She stalked and harassed my husband, calling his HR department at work, stalking him on social media, harassing his family, and when I refused to talk to her. She called CPS on me, lied and told them I was neglecting my children because I wouldn't let her see them after I learned she was abusing my niece. Gosh, this poor woman. I explained to her that my husband and I agreed that no one was allowed to spank our children, and were firmly against it, and she responded smugly that if they stayed with her, she would punish them however she deemed fit. I was whipped with a belt as a child. That was when we decided she wasn't allowed to be around our children. While she thinks she was an amazing mother and will take credit for any good decisions I've made in my life, she's abusive and toxic. I cut off all contact with her because she refuses to accept any responsibility for emotionally, mentally, and physically abusing me, and she's expressed no remorse. She thinks she was a great mother, and she would continue her abusive ways with my children if I allowed her to have a relationship with them. Until a parent can totally reflect on their own behaviors and take responsibility for their actions and stop blaming their children, why should an adult child continue to have a relationship with them? Too many abusive, toxic parents think, I did the best I could and that should suffice as an apology, but they don't see what they did really hurt their children. And now that their children are adults and have the choice to have a relationship with their parents, the kids don't want to have relationships with them. Why do some kids abandon their old parents? I'm 31. My parents are both narcissists, and I've recently made a plan to move out. Yes, I still live at home because when your parents control every life decision down to what job you can take and what job you can or can't quit, independence is unheard of. Currently, I live with my mom and my grandma. My dad is a bigger narcissist than my mom, therefore I've chosen to live here. My grandma has dementia, which is progressing, and my mom is forcing me to take care of her. And I don't necessarily mind, but what I do mind is the fact that my mom disrespects my sleep and everything else because of wanting me to take care of my grandma. Having narcissistic parents has given me anxiety, and therefore I usually have insomnia. Expecting me to wake up at 8 a.m. when I just fell asleep at 4 is really difficult. I'm beginning to resent the fact that I have no peace and can't even have the basic necessity of sleep. I'm beginning to realize how for 31 years I haven't lived a single day for myself. I'm not allowed to make my own decisions. I have to essentially ask for permission to go out at a time when mom isn't working and can be at home to supervise my grandma. Shocking. For 31 years, my mom has exerted full control of my life, as well as enjoying puppeteering my life and getting high off causing me anxiety by kicking me out of the house for nonsensical things. I'm constantly on edge, worried that she'll burst in my room, raging about something illogical and use it as a reason to kick me out the house. This poor child. So my plan is to save as much money as possible so that when my grandma dies, whenever my mom tries to kick me out, I'll have somewhere to go. She's made my life miserable all my life. I'm looking forward to discovering peace and finding out what I like. Once I leave, I don't intend to ever go back. I'm done being her bitch. I'm done being abused. I have no intention of taking care of her in old age. I refuse to live like this. She's constantly showed no regard for my life or my feelings. She doesn't give a fuck. Now that now I have chest pains to accompany my anxiety. I am only 31 and I'll be damned if I die of a heart attack trying to please an ever-nagging bitch. I'm 31 and I don't know what it's like to live a day for myself. It's very sad, but I think these sentiments are echoed by many children. So my advice to parents where kids have actually walked away from them is let go. I know it's difficult. One minute you're doing everything for them, suddenly they get older and they don't need you anymore, right? Well, if you did your job right, you're meant to have created independent children that function autonomously to you. If you did your job wrong, the kids are unable to leave and are clingy and dependent. Your job is to let go, and then when they need you, they'll come to you. Don't live in their pockets. Don't infringe on their lives. Don't tell them what to do. Don't insinuate yourself into their lives or demand their time. They don't owe you because they are your kids. Don't guilt them and don't tell them that they should feel bad for not seeing you. Learn to respect their decision and their lives. I'd like to make another point here. Estrangement doesn't just happen to people who were bad moms or bad dads. Decent moms also lose their kids to new partners. Estrangement can happen to anyone. It's still considered taboo to be estranged from one's family, especially to be estranged from one's mother. Sometimes, however, kids choose to distance themselves from parents for many different reasons, and sometimes there really is no explanation for their estrangement, which is something parents find very difficult. Most often, kids go no contact with their moms because their moms display dysfunctional behavior that has demanded an enormous cost to the kids' mental well-being, and they're simply no longer willing to pay the cost. One of my dearest friends had a dysfunctional mom, and my friend has gone no contact for many years. But this mom is quite manipulative and is constantly trying to manipulate family members to get her daughters to interact with her again. She takes no responsibility for the toxicity she imposed on her kids when she was young, and she constantly makes out that her daughters are at fault. I'm going to talk about estrangement of moms from daughters now. Daughters often play the roles of a family mediator, scapegoat, keeper of secrets, or emotional caretaker. And daughters are the ones who are called upon to make all the sacrifices in the family. If a daughter on a path of growth who wishes to evolve beyond her typical role in the family, perhaps by being more empowered and having firmer boundaries, becomes less tolerant of poor treatment, the fallout from her decisions indicates the general health of the family. Healthy families will support her choice. Unhealthy families will not. Unhealed trauma in family members can cause family members to feel threatened when the daughter wants to make changes. The daughter may be attacked. Some families might want to accuse their daughter of being dysfunctional because she won't support the status quo. The mom may avoid taking responsibility for the trauma that is causing her to attack her daughter and project onto her daughter. The story of a mom whose son turned away from them after he met his girlfriend. I was a basket case during those first 6 months of estrangement, gaining weight, not sleeping, or else having nightmares. The first holiday season was particularly tough. I rushed around wrapping presents and preparing food, but when Christmas was over, I lay in bed wondering if I'd done enough. I thought, will everyone else just leave me too? It was pitiful, but fear of abandonment is common for estranged parents. You devoted your whole life to your child. If that person can leave, anyone can. That night, as I lay there in the darkness, thinking of all the time and energy I'd wasted crying over a grown adult who didn't want me, I couldn't help but think how much time I was wasting. I'd worn out my husband, my other children, and even some of my friends with my sadness. They all missed the optimistic Sherry. So did I. So, in the previous video, I talked about moms playing favorites and favoring sons over daughters, and I'd like to highlight this particularly because I think this is one of the big reasons for estrangement of moms from daughters. I've included an article from The Guardian where moms admit favoring sons over daughters. Survey of 2,500 for parenting website reveals 90% of mothers treat boys and girls differently. This is very sad, very toxic, and it's about time moms stopped doing this. Mothers are more critical of their daughters than their sons and admit to having a stronger bond with their little boys, according to research. Funny thing is, it's usually the boys move away to have other lives, and usually the daughters are the ones that are busy doing the caretaking and caregiving. So be very careful when you favor a child based on sex, moms, because you're going to battle for it going forward. So let's examine this situation more. While they praise particular characteristics in their sons, seeing them as funny, cheeky, and playful, mothers admit that they are likely to denigrate their daughters for showing similar attributes, referring to them as stroppy or argumentative. Moms. The 2,500 strong survey by parenting website NetMoms found that although almost one half of mothers say they know it's wrong to treat boys and girls differently, almost 90% admit they do exactly that. Mothers are, the research shows, twice as likely to be more critical of their daughters than their sons, while over half admitted that they feel a stronger tie to their son than their daughter. It's ridiculous. It's just ridiculous. The research shows that moms type their children according to gender, with boys being labeled with far more positive traits than their sisters. I just want to, I'm not even laughing because this is funny, it's pathetic. More than 1 in 5 mothers questioned admitted that they turn a blind eye to behavior of boys for which they would reprimand their girls. And this, people, is why women don't want to partner with your sons, because you've created monsters. Okay, lazy, entitled boys that no woman wants to be with. That's why there's a growth worldwide in single men. Look at your parenting and change your parenting. Christy Duff, a psychotherapeutic counselor, said this combination of a more critical upbringing and attributed negative personality types can have a long-lasting and serious effect on daughters. It makes them pissed off. Women in particular seem to carry the feelings of parental disapproval and negative typing into their childhood, said Duff. The experience of receiving more negative reinforcements for stepping out of life than their male counterparts can lead women to view themselves as more needing of censure. This could be why women are more self-critical than men, who have a more happy-go-lucky attitude when it comes to making mistakes and moving past them, she added. Almost half of the mothers questioned also admitted that their sons are mummy's boys. Oh, God. Who wants to take on a mummy's boy? Not many women, at least not anyone with any sense. Over 1 in 4 confess to loving their boys differently to their girls. It's a huge failure with mothers, really. And then they wonder why their kids don't want to be involved with them when they get older. They fuss over their boys and smother them, and they neglect their daughters. Why would anyone want to be involved with that when they get older? Sorry, moms, but you need to do better. When daughters become estranged from their mothers, there are usually very good reasons. The daughter, having realized that she's not being supported and is being attacked, decides to do the obvious thing, take care of her growth and cut contact with a toxic family that doesn't have her best interests at heart. The family continues to blame the daughter and refuse to look at their own dysfunction. The daughter can survive her mom's rejection of her. She becomes empowered. Moving away from toxicity helps her to heal and grow. Estrangement leaves the daughter free to live life full on her terms, free from her mother's judgment. Moms and daughters don't need to be enmeshed. In fact, it's healthy to separate. This is something I've been teaching my own daughter. Your daughter is not your babysitter. She's not your friend, and she's not your confidant. So don't use her as these things. It's not fair. Your role is to parent her, not for her to parent you, and not for her to fill in where you can't parent your other kids. I recognized that my daughter needed to learn to not rely on me as much as she'd been. She needed to have confidence in her abilities, and the only way she could do this was if I wasn't around for her to lean on. So I moved away and gave her the space to make her own decisions and learn the lessons she needed to learn. I need to know she can survive without me, because I know that I won't be around forever. I don't understand mothers who are too enmeshed with their kids. To me, this is hugely unhealthy. Our culture does not often offer women a ritual for the natural developmental stage of separating from their mothers and being initiated into their own lives. And the same applies to men who are babied by their mothers, to their huge detriment. Your kids are meant to be individuals, separate from you, and you are meant to take joy as they grow and shine without needing your hand to hold all the time. If you're dependent on your kids, then you have an issue, and you need therapy to resolve the issues that cause your codependent behavior, because it is codependence, and you need to work on it and have therapy to address it. Let's look at moms abusing daughters and babying sons. Unfortunately, moms tend to abuse their daughters and give them wrong messages and baby their sons. When a daughter sees this, she becomes resentful, she feels neglected, and believe me, she will never overcome this deep resentment. This parenting negatively affects both the sons and the daughters and can cause both parties to walk away from their parents. Mothers tend to use their daughters as childminders of younger kids. This is not your daughter's role. If you have kids, they are your responsibility, not your daughter's. So stop doing this to your daughters, please, mothers. Stop telling your daughters to serve your husbands and sons as if they are lesser beings. Stop telling them to give up their lives and dreams for the sake of the family. Stop squashing their dreams and goals to uplift yourself, and stop pressuring them to have children when they don't want them. Realize that your child is not your puppet, your babysitter, or anything other than an individual with her own goals and dreams that you are tasked with nurturing and protecting. Moving forward. Okay, so there's nowhere to go but moving forward after you're estranged from your child. Sometimes people judge me and other estranged parents who have moved forward. They say they would never give up on their child. I understand their feelings, but sometimes giving in to an adult child's decision is the only sensible choice. I wish my son the best. I hope he's happy and well, but I can't too, and that's what I want other estranged families to know. If you can just let go of those whys and what ifs and move on to what's next, you can live a fulfilling life.